CBS News, Germany accuses Russia of hybrid attack with leaked audio of military officials discussing Ukraine. Wait, what? All right, let's slow down. The Daily Beast says leaked audio proves Germany plans to attack Russian territory, Kremlin claims. It's the second time in a week that Moscow has claimed to have evidence of an imminent Western attack. Long story short. Actually, I'll just throw it to Mike Cernovich. He says World War III has already begun. British troops are directing airstrikes in Ukraine. Germany intends to bomb Crimea. DW News reported Germany's defense ministry confirmed the authenticity of a recording leaked by Russian state media in which high-ranking military officers secretly discuss aid for Ukraine. Specifically, whether Taurus cruise missiles would be capable of destroying a bridge, seemingly a reference to the new bridge linking Russian-occupied Crimea to the Russian mainland over the Kerch Strait. The clip also contained references to the British having a few people on the ground. So Vladimir Putin comes out and says, this is evidence of an attack. Germany accuses Russia of an attack. Okay, fine. Gentlemen, I don't care who's responsible. Y'all are both admitting an attack happened. So are we in World War III yet or what?
We're in a world proxy war. And I wouldn't even use this as the main evidence.
A world proxy war?
Because you don't actually have all the powers going to war with each other like you did in World War I and World War II, where you had conventional tank battles, you had air battles. It's fairly well constrained to between Ukraine and Russia, and yet everyone else is throwing in all the cash and all the money to make it happen. And it didn't start with this. I mean, you can go back to 2014, I think during the CIA provoked Maidan revolution, say it started then, but the Nord Stream bombing. Like the idea that Putin went and blew up his main source of economic and political leverage over Western Europe. Like, are you kidding me? No, of course it was NATO or Ukraine or the West or whatever you want to call it. I would say the powers that be in this country, they want a world war. They desperately want it. They've said it.
Population reduction?
Well, they make a lot of money on it, and they have an enemy that they are able to focus people's hatred on. So as long as I've been an adult, America has been at war. Started with Afghanistan after 9/11, and then they added Iraq onto it. And then literally like the second that Afghanistan was over, they're like, well, crap, we got to make a new one. So you just moved right on. Like they just seamlessly moved over into Ukraine. So, I mean, it could just be that people running things are just straight evil, and so they like war. It could be a weird ideological thing where they actually believe that Vladimir Putin is the greatest threat the world has ever seen, which is obviously nonsense. The guy's a kleptocrat who's running the equivalent of a third world gas station. And then you could just have like the straight up war pigs who are like, yeah, this is actually great for the bottom line.
Yeah, we are making so much money right now.
Defense stocks are crushing it right now. Yeah, I think they clearly want world war. They're trying to get to it. And it's why they react so angrily when anyone goes on TV or goes to Congress and is like, hey guys, I don't know, our border's overrun. You said we couldn't spend $5 billion on a wall. Maybe we shouldn't spend $250 billion in Ukraine. And it looks like they're showing a cross to a vampire.
Their response is like, how dare you say that? It's
insane.
It's crazy. So, but when does it become a world war? Like if we're in a proxy war right now, what's the tipping point? When do we
I would think the second other nations start putting ground troops in.
I'm really excited for Harry Sisson getting drafted and sent to Ukraine because he's a patriot.
No, he'll get a deferment.
Well, come on, don't say that.
No, so important people don't have to go and fight wars. Wars are the things that the government gets other people.
We want him to you know.
I'm sure he would volunteer. I'm sure he would want to go.
Sown.
He's a fortunate son of the Biden regime. He's not going there.
He certainly is a fortunate son. Yeah, he's not going anywhere. That's a sad reality. But maybe we can ask him to pull off an Edge of Tomorrow, and we'll say, well, you got to go. You got to film from the front lines. Make him go do some propaganda work.
Good idea.
Isn't that what JFK did? Didn't he he could have gotten out somehow, and he was like, no, I'm going to go to war. I'm going to fight. I mean, there was a time when people did feel called to serve their countries when there's military action. I just think right now no one would do that because no one trusts the government.
Yeah, well, look what the government does to the people who volunteer to go over there. They send them over there in a mission they have no plan to win. They watch them get blown up. They come home scarred mentally and emotionally. They have their veterans benefits cut. And that's the government's extent of involvement. I mean, I think you'd have to be nuts right now looking at how this government and this regime treats people who went to combat and say to yourself, I think I should go and do this. And it's why the recruiting numbers are so awful. because we've all seen how the government treats people who go to war, and they treat them like crap.
Well, it's probably why they put forward the Courage to Serve Act and are letting millions of non-citizens, criminal aliens, flood the border, because they're going to be like, all right, you're all here. Get in the military vehicle for your deployment.
Come back to this spot on this date, and you'll all get in the thing and go deploy.
Here's a question.
I think that'll work for sure.
What do you think conservatives would say if Joe Biden came out and said, we were going to take all of the undocumented, he would call them, the newcomers, and we're going to deploy them to Ukraine. Don't worry, they're not American citizens. Like, what would people say to that? Like, the left would lose their mind, but they got to support Ukraine, right?
Man, that's a great question.
The right's going to be like, well, he is deporting them. Do we really care where he's deporting them to?
No, because it'd be strings, right? We're not just like sending them being like, bye, Ukraine government, you take these new soldiers. It would be like, well, we sent them there, so we're obligated to give them care, so we got to up our aid package.
I'm saying hypothetically right now, Biden comes out and says, we'll deport all of the criminal aliens, all of the undocumented who come to this country will be deported officially to Ukraine.
They will have American equipment, such as
not even
M16s and whatever the hell weapons they're
but
using.
No strings. They're you know, my friends in the Republican Party, you know, I can see that they're rather upset about this. So we have come up with a compromise in order to get more troops into Ukraine without spending any more money. And I mean, it's a win-win for conservatives, right? You don't got to spend any money on Ukraine. The Democrats say, okay, we're going to cut all of our budget requests for Ukraine. Republicans go, and we're going to deport every single criminal alien in this country. And they go, and what's the catch? None. They're just going to Ukraine.
So it's a win-win except for the millions of people being trafficked over the border.
People are already being trafficked over the border. Like, at least now they know where they're
now
going.
Now they're getting thrown in a meat grinder.
Oh
Congrats.
Gosh, it's crazy.
I wouldn't be surprised, to be completely
nightmare.
honest, if, you know, with the Courage to Serve Act, for those that don't know, is basically if you're an illegal immigrant and you serve, you can get citizenship. I would not be surprised if Biden says, like we're on the doorstep of World War III. Within a few months, he says, the Courage to Serve Act, we're gonna run this program. Congress, of course, is in uproar. Biden defies Supreme Court, does it anyway, whatever. Takes as many as possible illegal immigrants, puts them on a plane, drops them off in Ukraine, and they never come back.
I think we would have Republican Senate leadership saying, no, we need to compromise here. All the illegals, they'll take the Americans' jobs, and we'll just draft the Americans and send them over there.
Yeah, compromise. We'll let you do the amnesty package, and then we'll draft Americans.
I think that's what we would see from Republicans in leadership in Congress.
I also feel like Ukraine would come back to the U.S. and be like, you deported all these people here, so now we have an even bigger unskilled population that's under threat of war, so we need more aid always. Like, Ukraine would be on board if we continue to get money, but ultimately, there's no way that we could just be like, and we have now diverted this group of people, these people coming to our country, to Ukraine, without Ukraine being like, you now owe us even more. And then every Democrat in both sides of Congress would be like, well, we did make their lives harder, so now we should probably give them more money. Like, that's ultimately what this is going to come down to.
Well, that's the other side of the coin with the nonstop forever war. They make all the money on the front end, breaking everything, and then you got to come back in and rebuild it. Mm-hmm. That costs like 2-3 times as much.
Keep yourself employed forever this way.
And then by then you'll have a new war you can start.
That's so fun.
But back to the main question, like if Biden announced we are suspending all funding requests for Ukraine, and we will be deporting all illegal immigrants in this country to Ukraine to fight in the war, like, would conservatives be like, no, please don't, you can't do that? Like, well, in serious, like, what would the PR public response be?
It's such a no-brainer, so they wouldn't do it. So you're admitting you have the ability to send them somewhere. Just send them back. Mm-hmm. Just send them back. Send them back to where they were.
Because Democrats would be like, you can't send them to a war zone. Their part is like, we're deporting them to fight in a war, but how do you make sure they fight in the war? You really can't unless you make them part of your army and give them the skills and training, which I don't want to invest in people who are already in this country illegally. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's why I don't support this. Oh, if you're an illegal immigrant, you can join our military and then become a citizen. Like, but then you are admitting to me that you're here illegally and I'm supposed to pretend that you're not committing a crime by being here. Like, it doesn't make sense. There's no consistency there.
Also, Biden would never do that because the whole point of opening the border is to replace the American people.
Yeah, he only wants to send Americans to war.
To create more congressional districts that will vote Democrat.
Right. Well, and it's an ideological thing, too. The left, the communists believe that borders are racist and evil, and America's just an economic zone that happens to have a different currency. So they ideologically reject the entire concept of borders. Borders are racist and oppressive.
Sure.
I like my borders, my walls, my house.
That's
Without
because you're
it-
a privileged white male.
Who knows what wild animals might arrive?
Someone make a picture of a guy pole vaulting through Ian's window into his house. That's a meme to explain the problem
Give it to me.
of illegal immigration.
Walls are actually very cool, and so are borders.
So there's on the 11th, they're ending that federal loan program for banks. Did you hear about that? They've been doing this thing where they've been printing out loans to banks to try and stabilize. Yeah, right. It's called, what was it called? Someone brought it up to us, the federal loan program or something like that. I don't know, bank funding program, but it's ending on the 11th. And now a lot of people believe that we're going to see a major economic collapse in the next few months because of it. This, along with all the war stuff, the collapse in recruitment numbers, the flooding of illegal immigrants. You know, a lot of people like to make references to ancient Rome because Rome had a lot of these things happen. But the reality is, you know, we talked to these two guys about the Roman Empire, and all of the things that we're talking about happened over hundreds of years in Rome. You know, barbarians were over a long period of time. The credit crunch was in one period. Amnesty was in another period. So it was like over 100 years these things happened. Everyone hears these little tidbits and they go, wow, ancient Rome had that happen. It's like, yeah, but ancient Rome was also like, what, 1,000 years or something like that? So like the Roman Empire was a very, very long time. That being said, watching all of these things happen at once kind of feels like it's all going to just, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think there is a level of stress and desperation, this feeling that we're at the end. I have to remember her name, Emily something on Instagram, but I referenced this a little while ago. She had this
Saves
video.
America?
No, I'll find it in a second. She made this reel where it's like, it's kind of surreal to be planning your wedding, you know, in 2024 because I don't know if we'll be here at the end of it. But also, should my color scheme be blue and pink? Like, there's this thing where it's like, it feels. I'm gonna look her up because she deserves a shout out. But it's this idea that the world feels so tumultuous right now, but also every day you get up and go to work. It feels like anything could happen, but also maybe the ship will stabilize, and so you just keep going. And especially if we were talking about this before the show, but if you're economically crunched right now, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, I can only imagine that you're going to basically fall into crippling depression because it's just getting so tight. It's getting so unbearable.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.